hands of Willie Hackett, the Spitfire 5. I mentioned Hurricanes. We're now somewhat unexpectedly expecting to see two more in a very unusual combination. From the Royal Air Force Battle of Britain Memorial Flight, we were expecting Lancaster, Hurricane and Spitfire, their usual trio, but we gather it's going to be two of the Hawker fighters today, the two Hurricanes with the BBMF joining the Lancaster, and we're expecting an entry from behind you.
Then it makes it all the more fitting that we got to juxtapose the Spitfire and Hurricane in that last slot, given
rotating German coastal defences around Normandy. A PR-11 leads this pair of PR Spitfires with the Mark 19. Spitfire 11 from the Aircraft Restoration Company in Duxford of Aircrafters, original reserve.
guys doing their best to get cannon fire into the engine, into the oil cooler. To bail out and surrender to the forces of Britain in those days. He would have been sent probably to Canada or up to Scotland, where they had a nice shot view cameras. Well, I hope you enjoyed a really theatrical recreation of an excerpt from the Battle of Britain. That's exactly what it would have looked like. And there you just saw as they made us turn it in from the Schneider Trophy into this.
In France, we shall fight on the seas and oceans. We shall fight with growing confidence and growing strength in the air. We shall defend our island, whatever the cost may be.
West Hampton, any of the fighter stations, Duxford, Rochford, Gravesend, maybe. Was developed as a side-by-side trainer, a successful airplane, but the Strikemaster is an upgraded version designed to carry small armaments, small rockets and guns, sold quite well around the world to other air forces. They're just running in now, here we go. Cameras ready, smoke on, and then away. Just going to have a little listening to the cockpit.
Reversing right. Coming left down.
These are highly disciplined, well-rehearsed manoeuvres with very crisp command from the aircraft parking. Can't just stand there. Has to be very carefully worked out. And you can hear those crisp commands to keep this display nice and tight. Here's a lovely shot for you as they're coming round to the left. It's not completely unusual for piston-engine aircraft to chase jet fighters. The Israeli lovely camera shot for you. That was to be followed by a 360 to the right. The airport was closed, so we rang them up. We said, can we bring a Balbo down the runway? And they said, we certainly can. And we did. It was about 35 of us. Marvellous afternoon out it was. So that's Balbo flying. It's sometimes called the Goody Bird, the DC-3, the DAC, workhorse of the Royal Air Force, United States Army Air Force, latterly the United States Air Force. And here's a lovely shot as they come, if you look to your right, just turning down the main centre line, led by the Dakota, the two North American T6 Harvards, followed by the Supermarine Spitfires. Spitfire Supermarine. Right to left. Two Air Legends Spitfires. Anybody's ever built an airfix kit? Statue has been erected in his honour. Group Captain Barder spent most of the war in Colditz Castle as a prisoner. Famous photographs that the Freeman family who own the Serra still have from back in the day, and there were two runways in those days. That's a typical recreation when victory in Europe was announced. The lights of Charlie Brown and Parky Parkinson coming in right to left. It's worth pointing out that a victory roll was frowned upon by the station commander and was discouraged, but pilot types, Barder of course, Hurricane or Spitfire, once you had ours in a fighter aircraft. simply can. It was originally a two-winged aircraft, a biplane, and readjust the position of the flying controls slightly, and the result was what we see today. The Hawker Hurricane has gone through many marks in its progression. A formidable airplane when fully loaded with Browning 303 ammunition in the hands of a skilled pilot. One of the telltales of the aircraft to spot it is the rather flat slab-looking wing as opposed to once again, your right to left. Hurricane had a variable armament from 303 machine guns to rockets. At one time there were no Hurricanes. Spitfires, if you get your camera fingers ready as we coming sadly to the end of our first day, our first weekend. Let's enjoy the Hurricane and the Spitfire. Now the Hurricane's going to break away.